This is a continuation of the Salesforce Developers codeLive session that I did with Julian. It's a part 2 of transforming your Salesforce API to MuleSoft. Now, in that presentation, we built an implementation for this API. Unfortunately, we were not able to finish all of it in an hour, and so we had done the flights endpoint, gets all the flights by destination, but we weren't able to finish the get flights by code, which returns the flight information based on the ID, the unique ID of that flight. So we're gonna do that right now. So let's go ahead and get started. We're gonna build the 3 subflows first for each one of the airlines, and then we're gonna make an endpoint from this flow that actually calls each one of these based on the ID. All right, so first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna build the Delta flow first. Let me see if I can grab the subflow, and we're gonna call that get Delta by code. All right, and so the Delta service is on a SOAP endpoint. So we're gonna grab the web service consumer. We're gonna drag that over here, and then we're gonna configure that. So let me give it some more room here. Some more room. So, all right, so we're gonna consume, we're gonna get the list all flights. When the metadata finishes refreshing here. There we go. We're gonna call the list all flights. They don't have a get flights operation for this web service, so we're gonna have to get the list of all the flights and just iterate through it until we find the right one. And then we're gonna pass that to payload. All right. And then we want to go ahead and, like everything else, transform the message that comes back. It's being sent back, so we're gonna get a transformer, and then we're going to use this data weave, which is pretty complex. So what we do is we're gonna first, we're gonna return it as JSON, and we're gonna import this arrays package, and specifically the first with function. So we're going to iterate through all the list flight response that come by and create a map. So each one have a key of these same keys that we're returning for all the other services. And then at the end, we're gonna find the first one where the flight code matches the code in the database. So we're gonna pluck it that way, basically. All right, so that's the code Delta by code right there, all right? The next one's gonna be United. So United is on a REST endpoint. So we're gonna go ahead and grab let's get our subflow first. We'll grab our subflow, and we'll call that United. Let's trust. United by code. And then we're gonna grab the HTTP request, drag that in here. And it's gonna have an endpoint. Let's see, we're gonna use the REST configuration. And for the path, we're gonna use this data weave. And we're gonna be flights, and then we're gonna append the code that we actually sent over on the API to that. All right. And then of course we need another transformer. Transform that message, and then this will look very familiar again. So it's going to be essentially, we're returning one record this time from the API. So that the REST API has an endpoint where you can request a specific record by ID. So we're going to be getting one back this time, and we're going to just set the values in this key value pair again. And that's that one for the United by code. And the last one is American by code. So let's see, we're going to grab another subflow here. By code. All right. And this one's a database. So we're going to connect this. This is actually a Postgres database. So we're going to do a select here. And our SQL is the following. We're going to use the database connector, and we're going to query for all of the columns in the American table for that code. And we also have to grab the code that was passed over. So we'll add that to there. So we're going to say the code equals the vars.code that was passed over there. All right. So that's the database part. Let's look at that again here. Look at that again. And then we're going to, of course, do the transformation one more time. Get it over here. And let's look very similar again. We're going to transform that. We're going to get a map of the records that come back. And then another transformer we're going to have is we're going to transform, just send back one record, because that endpoint brings back a collection, but we only want one. And we could have probably put it in here too, but typically I had this before where it was one transformer and they all shared that one. So there was basically a reference to transformer. So, but not a big deal. So we're going to return the first record of that payload back. All right. So I'm going to save that. And now we're going to create the flow that actually combines all these together and returns one record back based on the beginning of the ID. So we're going to, this is actually the endpoint. So we're going to create a flow here. We're going to get a listener. Let me scroll up a little bit here. So we'll add a listener here. And we're going to use HTTP listener, and we're going to do flights code. All right, that's our endpoint, flights/code. And then we're going to add, we want to add a variable on here. So we're going to set a variable. I think we're under core here, set a variable. We're going to set a variable. And that variable is going to be called code. And we're going to use the URI parameter called code that's passed over. So it'll be flight/the code. And then we're going to pick that as a URI parameter on there. Okay, so that's our code. Let's call this set code. Set code. Okay. Oh. Okay. So like we did in the other get flights endpoint, this one's going to have a choice also. So the choice is going to be basically essentially an if then. So we're going to grab this choice in here. And we're going to set this choice based on the first couple of, or the first character of the flights code. So the first one's going to be, we're going to do a choice here. So if the code starts with D, we're going to run the subflow for delta. Oh, I'm sorry, we want a flow reference. Sorry, not a subflow, flow reference. And we're going to so if it's D, we're going to choose delta by code. All right. And then we're going to also, let's grab another one in here. If you drag this choice over to here, this has a hard time sometimes doing this. Let's try it one more time here. Actually, it's the flow reference, so my bad. So we have a flow reference here, and then we'll add another flow reference. If I can get that up there. And there it goes. Okay. So when the code starts with A for American, starts American, we're going to add the American by reference, by code. So that's American by code. Actually, let's go ahead and put some text in here also. This is delta by code. This is American by code. And lastly, we're going to do, the final one is United by code. And we're going to use the flow reference of United by code. Okay. So that should do our endpoints. This is going to be if I can type. Okay, flights by code. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that. And then we're going to run this project. Okay, I think that a couple minutes that's back up now. Let's go ahead and take a look here. All right, so here's our endpoint /flights. Run that. Okay, we have Delta in there. We have Delta, we have American, and we have United. Yep, there we go. Okay, so let's go ahead and start getting some of these by code. So there's a Delta flight. So if we add Delta on here, we get the Delta stuff back, great. And then let's see, American, here's American flight. There's American, all right, perfect. And then United, and then we get a United flight. So there we go. That's the implementation that we're looking for. And next part of the program, we're going to actually do the Salesforce implementation on this part with the new endpoint. So there you go. Thank you very much.